6. Imagination, the workshop of the mind, the fifth step to riches. The imagination is literally the workshop where, in an hour fashioned, all plans are created by people. The impulse, the desire is given shape, form, and action through the aid of imaginative faculty of the mind. It has been said that when we create anything, we can imagine. Of all the ages of civilization, this is most favorable for the development of imagination because it is an age of rapid change. Everywhere we can come into contact with stimuli that develop the imagination. Through the aid of imaginative faculty, humankind has discovered and harnessed more of nature's forces during the past 50 years than during the entire history of human race previous to that time. We have conquered the air so completely that the birds are poor match for us in flying. We have harnessed the ether and made it serve as a means of instantaneous communication with any part of the world. We have analyzed and weighed the sun at a distance of millions of miles and have determined through the aid of imagination the elements of which it consists. We have discovered that our own brain is both a broadcasting and a receiving station for the vibration of thought. We are beginning now to learn how to make practical use of this discovery. We have increased the speed of locomotion until we may now travel at a speed of more than 600 miles an hour. Our only limitation within reason lies is the development and use of our imagination. We have not yet reached the apex of the development in the use of our imaginative faculty. We have merely discovered that we have an imagination and have commenced to use it in a very elementary way. Two forms of imagination. The imaginative faculty functions in two forms. One is known as the synthetic imagination and other is known as the creative imagination. Synthetic imagination. Through this faculty, one may arrange old concepts, ideas, or plans into new combinations. This faculty creates nothing. It merely works in the material of experience, education, and observation with which it is fed. It is the faculty that used most by the inventor, with the exception of the genius who draws upon the creative imagination when they cannot solve a problem through synthetic imagination. Creative imagination. Through the faculty of creative imagination, the finite mind of humankind has direct communication with infinite intelligence. It is the faculty through which hunches and inspirations are received. It is by this faculty that all basic and new ideas are developed. It is through his faculty that through vibrations from the mind of others are received, and it is through this faculty that one individual may tune into or communicate with subconscious mind of others. The creative imagination works automatically in the manner described in the subsequent pages. The faculty functions only when the conscious mind is vibrating at an exceedingly rapidly rate, as for example when the conscious mind is stimulated through the emotion of the strong desire. The creative faculty becomes more alert, more receptive to vibrations from the sources mentioned in proportion to its development through use. Indeed, both the synthetic and the creative faculties of imaginations become more alert with use, just as any muscle or organs of the body develops through use. Your imaginative faculty may have become weak through inaction. It can be revived and made alert through use. This faculty does not die through it may become quiescent through lack of use. This statement is significant. Ponder on it before continuing. Keep in mind as you follow this principle that the entire story of how one may convert desire into money cannot be told in one statement. The story will complete only when one has mastered, assimilated, and begun to make use of all principles. The great leader of business, industry, and finance, and great artists, musicians, poets, and writers became great because they developed the faculty of creating imagination. Desire is only a thought and impulse, it nebulous and ephemeral. It is an abstract and no value until it has transformed into physical counterpart while the synthetic imagination is one used most frequently in the process of transforming the impulse of desire into money. You must keep in mind that you may face circumstances which demand use of creative imagination as well. Center your attention for the time being on the development of synthetic imagination. Transformation of the intangible impulse of desire into intangible reality of money calls for the use of plan or plans. These plans must be formed with the aid of imagination and mainly with the synthetic faculty. Read the entire book through, then come back to this chapter and read it begin it once to once to put your imagination to work on building plan or plans for the transmission of a desire into money. Detailed instruction for building plans have been given in almost every chapter. Carry out the instruction best suited to your needs. Put your plan in writing if you have not already done so. The moment you complete this, you will have a definitely given concrete form of to the intangible desire. Read the preceding sentence once more. Read it aloud very slowly as you do so. Remember that the moment you put in writing the statement of your desire and plan for its realization, you have actually taken the first series of steps that will enable you to convert the thought into its practical physical counterpart. The earth on which you live, you yourself, and every other material thing are the result of evolutionary change through which microscope bits of matter have been organized and arranged in an ordinary fashion. Moreover, and this statement is stupendous important, this earth, every one of the billions of individual cells of your body, and every atom of matter began as an intangible form of energy. Desire is a thought impulse. Thought impulses are the form of energy. When you begin with the thought impulse desire to accumulate money, you are drafting into your services the same stuff that nature used in creating this earth and every material form in the universe, including the body and the brain in which the thought impulses function. As far as science has been able to determine, this entire universe consists of but two elements, matter and energy. Through the combination of energy and matter has been created everything perceptible, from the largest star that floats in the heavens down to and including humankind. You are now engaged in the task of trying to profit by nature's method. You are sincerely and earnestly, we hope, trying to adapt yourself to nature's laws by endeavoring to convert desire into its physical and monetary equivalent. You can do it. It has been done before. You can build a fortune through the aid of immutable laws. But first, you must become familiar with these laws and learn to use them through repetition and by approaching the description of these principles from every conceivable angle. The author hopes to reveal you the secret through which great fortunes have been accumulated. Strange and paradoxical as it may seem, the secret is not a secret anymore. Nature herself advertises it on the earth on which we live, the stars, the planets suspended within our view, in the elements above and around us, in every blade of grass and every form of life within our vision. Nature advertises the secret in terms of biology in the conversion of tiny cells so small that it may be lost on the point of a pin into human being now reading this line. The conversion of this desire into its physical equivalent is certainly no more miraculous. Do not become discouraged if you do not fully comprehend all that has been stated, unless you have been a student of the mind. It is not to be expected that you will assimilate all that is in this chapter upon a first reading, but you will in time make good progress. The progress that follow will open the way for an understanding of imagination. Assimilate that which you understand as you read this philosophy for the first time. Then when you reread and study it, you will discover that something has happened to clarify it and give you a broader understanding of the whole. Above all, do not step nor hesitate in your study of these principles until you have read the book at least 3 times, for then you will not want to stop. How to make practical use of imagination. Ideas are the beginning points of all fortunes. Idea are products of the imagination. Let us examine few well-known ideas that have yielded huge fortunes with the hope that these illustrations will convey definite information concerning the method by which imagination may be used in accumulating riches. The enchanted kettle. Many years ago, an old country doctor drove to town hitched horses, quietly slashed into a drug store by back door, and began dickering. So much the young drug clerk. His mission was destined to yield great wealth to many people. It was destined to bring to the South the most far flung benefit since the Civil War. For more than an hour behind the prescription counter, the old doctor and the clerk talked in low tones. Then the doctor left. He went out to the buggy and brought back a large old fashioned kettle and big wooden paddle used for stirring the contents of the kettle and deposited them in the back of the store. The clerk inspected the kettle and reached into his inside pocket, took out a roll of his bills, and handed it over to the doctor. The roll contained exactly $500, the clerk's entire savings. The doctor handed over a small strip of paper on which was written the secret formula. The words on that small slip of paper were worth a king ransom. but not the doctor. Those magic words were needed to start the kettle boiling, but neither the doctor nor the young clerk knew what fabulous fortunes were destined to flow from that kettle. The old doctor was glad to sell out the outfit for $500. The money would pay off his debts and give him freedom of mind. The clerk was taking big chance to staking his entire life saving on a mere scrap of paper and an old kettle. He never dreamed that his investment would start a kettle overflowing with the gold that would surpass the miraculous performance of Aladdin's lamp. What the clerk really purchased was an idea. The old cattle and wooden pedal and the secret message on a slip of the paper was incidental. The strange performance of that kettle began to take place after new owner mixed with the secret instructions and ingredient of which the doctor knew nothing. Read this story carefully and give your imagination a test. See if you can discover what it was that young man added to the secret message which caused the kettle to overflow with gold. Remember, as you read, that this is not the story from Arabian Nights. Here you have the story of fact stranger than fiction, facts which begin in the form of an idea. Let us take a look at the vast fortunes of gold this idea has been produced. It has paid and still pays huge fortunes to men and women all over the world who distribute the contents of the kettle to millions of people. The old kettle is now one of the world's largest consumer of sugar, thus providing jobs of a permanent nature to thousands of men and women engaged in growing sugarcane and in refining and marketing sugar. The old kettle consumes annually millions of glass bottles, providing jobs to huge numbers of glass workers. The old kettle gives employment to army of clerks, copywriters, and advertising experts throughout the nation. It has brought fame and fortune to score of artists who have created magnificent pictures describing the product. The old cattle has converted small southern city into a business capital of the south, which now benefits directly or indirectly every business, practically every resident of the city. The influence of this idea now benefits every civilized country in the world, pouring out a continuous stream of gold to all who touch it. Gold from the kettle built and maintained one of the most prominent colleges of the South, where thousands of young people receive the training essential for the success. The old kettle has done the marvelous thing. Although the depression of 1930s, when the factories and banks and businesses house were folding up and quitting by thousands, the owner of this enchanted kettle were marching on, giving continuous employment to the army of men and women all over the world and paying out extra portions of gold to those who long ago had faith in the idea. If the product of that old brass kettle could talk, it would tell thrilling tales of romance in every language, romances of love, romance of business, romances of professional men and women who are daily stimulated by it. The author is sure of at least one much such romance, for he was a part of it, and it all began not far from the very spot which drug clerk purchased the old kettle. It was here that the author might met his wife, and it was she who first told him of the enchanted kettle. It was the product of that kettle they were drinking when he asked her to accept him for better or worse. Now that you know that the content of the enchanted kettle is the world famous drink, it is fitting that the author confess that the home city of the drink supplied him with a wife, also that the drink itself provides him with stimulation of the thought without intoxication, and variably serves to give the refreshment of mind. An author must have to do his best work. Whoever you are, wherever you may live, whatever occupation you may be engaged in, just remember in the future, every time you see the words Coca Cola, that is the vast empire of the wealth and influence grew up out of a single idea, and that the mysterious ingredient, the dark clerk as a Candler mixed with the secret formula was imagination. Stop and think about that for a moment. Remember also that 13 steps to riches described in this book were the media through which the influence of Coca Cola has been extended to every city, town, village, and crossroads of the world. Any idea that you may create as sound meritorious or Coca Cola has the possibility of duplicating tremendous record of this worldwide thirst killer. Truly, thoughts are things, and their scope of operation is the word itself. What would I do if I had $1 million? The story proves the worth of old saying, where there is will, there is a way. It was told to me by that beloved educator, clergyman Frank W. Ginesius, who began his preaching career in Stockyards region of South Chicago, which Dr. Gunnisolis was going through college. He observed many defects in our educational system, defect which he believed he could correct if he were the head of the college. Deepest desire was to become the directing head of an educational institution in which young men and women to be taught to learn by doing. He made up his mind to organize a college in which he could carry out his ideas without being handicapped by orthodox methods of education. He needed $1 million to put the project across where he has to lay his hands on so large a sum of money. That was the question that absorbed most of this ambitious young preacher's thought. But he could not seem to make any progress. Every night he took the thought to the bed with him. He got up with it in the morning. He took it with him everywhere he went. He turned it over in his mind until it became a consuming obsession with him. $1 million is a lot of money. He recognized that fact, but he also recognized the truth that only limitation is that which one sets up in its own mind. Being philosopher as well as a preacher, Dr. Gonzalez recognized, as do all succeed in life, the definiteness of purpose is the point from which one must begin. He recognized too that definiteness of purpose takes an animation, life, or power which backed by burning desire to translate that purpose into its material equivalent. He knew all these great truths, yet he did not know where or how to lay his hand on $1 million. The natural procedure would have been to give up and quit, saying, "Ah, well, my idea is the good one, but I cannot do anything with it because I never can procure the necessary $1 million." That is exactly what the majority of people would have said, but it is not what Dr. Gonzalez said. What he said and what he did are so important that I now introduce him and let him speak for himself. One Saturday afternoon, I sat in my room thinking of ways and means of raising the money to carry out my plans. For nearly 2 years, I had been thinking, but I had done nothing but think. The time had come for action. I made up my mind then and there that I would get the necessary $1 million within a week. How? I was not concerned about that. The main thing of the importance was that decision to get the money with a specified time. The moment I reached that decision, strange feeling of assurance came over me, such as I had never before experienced. Something inside me seemed to say, "Why didn't you reach that decision a long time ago? The money was waiting for you all the time." Things began to happen in a hurry. I called the newspaper and announced I would preach a sermon the following morning entitled "What I would do if I had $1 million." I went to work on a sermon immediately. I must tell you frankly, the task was not difficult because I had been preparing that sermon for almost 2 years. The of it was a part of me. Long before midnight, I had finished the writing the sermon. I went to the bed and slept with a feeling of confidence, for I could see myself already in possession of $1 million. Next morning, I arose early, went into the bathroom, and read the sermon, that knelt and prayed that my sermon might come to the attention of someone who would supply the needed money with. While I was praying, I again had that feeling of assurance that the money would be forthcoming. In my excitement, I walked out without my sermon and did not discover or the oversight until I was in my pupil pulpit and about ready to begin delivering it. I was too late to go back for my notes, and what a blessing that was. I instead my own subconscious mind yielded the material I needed. When I rose to begin my sermon, I closed my eyes and spoke with all my heart and soul of my dreams, and not only talked about my audience, but I fancy I talked also to God. I told what I would do with the $1 million if that amount were placed in my hands. I described the plan I had in my mind for organizing a great educational system where young people would learn to do practical things and the same develop their minds. When I had finished and sat down, a man slowly arose from his seat about 3 rows from the rear and made his way towards the pulpit, and I wondered what he was going to do. He came to the pulpit, extended his hand, and said, "Reverend, I liked your sermon. I believe you can do everything you said you would, and if you had $1 million. To prove that I believe in you and your sermon, if you will come to my office tomorrow morning, I will give you the $1 million. My name is Philip Dr. Armour." Dr. Gunnusulus went to the Mr. Armour's office, and the $1 million were presented to him. With the money, he founded the Armour Institute of Technology. That is more money than the majority of preachers ever see in their entire lifetime. Yet the thought impulse behind the money was created in the young preacher's mind in the fraction of a minute. The necessary $1 million came as a result of an idea. Behind the idea was a desire that young Gonzalez had been nursing in his mind for almost 2 years. Observe this important fact. He got the money within 36 hours of reaching a definite decision in his own mind to get it and deciding upon a definite plan for getting it. There was nothing new or unique about the Gunnasil's vague thinking about $1 million and weakly hoping for it. Others before him and many since his time he have had similar thoughts, but there was something unique and different about the decision he reached on that memorable Saturday when he put vagueness into the background and definitely said, I will get that money within a week. God seems to throw himself on the side of the people who know exactly what they want, if they are determined to get just that. Moreover, the principle through which Dr. Gonzalez got his $1 million is still alive. It is available to you. This universal law is workable today as it was when young preacher made use of it successfully. This book describes step by step the 13 elements of great law and suggests how they may be put to use. Observe that Asa Candler and Dr. Frank Gonzalez had one characteristic in common. Both knew the astounding truth that ideas can be transmuted into cash through the power of definite purpose plus definite plans. If you are one of those who believe that hard work and honesty alone will bring riches, perish this that thought. It is not true. Riches, when they come in huge quantities, are never the result of hard work. Riches come, if they come at all, in response to definite demands based upon the application of the definite principles and not by chance or luck. Generally speaking, an idea, an impulse of thought that impels action by an appeal to the imagination. All master sales reps knows that the idea can be solved where merchandise cannot. Ordinary sales reps do not know this. That is why they are ordinary. The publisher of the book made a discovery that should be worth much more to publishers generally. He learned that many people buy titles and not contents of the book. By merely changing the name of that one book that was not moving, his sales on that book jumped upward more than 1 million copies. The inside of the book was not changed in any way. He merely ripped off the cover bearing the title he did not sell and put a new cover with the title that had box office value. That is simple as it seems was an idea. It was imagination. There is no standard price on ideas. Creators of ideas make their own price, and if they are smart, they get it. The moving picture industry created a whole flock of millionaires. Most of them were men who could not create ideas, but they had imagination to recognize ideas when they saw them. Andrew Carnegie knew very little about making steel. I have Carnegie's own word for this, but he made practical use of the two principles described in his book and made the steel business yield him a fortune. The story of practically every great fortune starts with the day when a creator of ideas and seller of ideas got together and worked in harmony. Carnegie surrounded himself with experts who could do all that he could not do, people who created ideas and men who put ideas into operation and made themselves mind and the fabulously rich. Millions of people go through life hoping for favorable breaks. Perhaps a favorable break can get one an opportunity, but the safest plan is not to depend upon luck. It was a favorable break that gave me the highest, biggest opportunity of my life. But 25 years of determined effort have to be devoted to the opportunity before it became an asset. The break consisted of my good fortune in meeting and gaining the cooperation of Andrew Carnegie. On that occasion, Carnegie planted in my mind the idea of organizing the principles of achievement into a philosophy of success. Thousands of people have profited by the discoveries made in the 25 years of research, and several fortunes have been accumulated through the application of philosophy. The beginning was simple, it was an idea that anyone might have developed. The favorably break came through Carnegie, but what about the determination, definiteness of purpose, the desire to attain the goal, and the persistent efforts of 25 years? It was no ordinary desire that survived disappointment, disencouragement, temporary defeat, criticism, and constant accusation of waste of time. It was a burning desire and obsession. When Mr. Carnegie first planted the idea in my mind, it was coaxed and nursed and enticed to remain alive. Gradually, the idea became a giant under its own power, and it coaxed and nursed and drove me. Ideas are like that. First, you give life, action, and guidance to ideas, then they take on a power of their own and sweep aside all opposition. Like Andrew Carnegie, Herb Kelleher, one of the founders of Southwest Airlines, is a good example of seller ideas. He was a lawyer in Antonio, Texas, where Roland King is the creator of an idea, asked for his help in founding a new airline. Roland King was an investment advisor. As a side business, he ran an unprofitable air charter services between small Texas cities. At that time, most Americans who traveled by air were business executives or wealthy pleasure seekers. King first stated when he wanted to fly from one city in Texas to another, he could never get a seat in the airlines that currently flew those routes, and besides, prices were too high. He recognized the need to create an airline that would fly in just between the three biggest cities in the state. King knew his little airline was not up to the task and decided to start one. He put together feasibility study and business plan. He raised $1 million and then went to Kelleher, his lawyer, to arrange for the necessary paperwork to create Airline Southwest Co., later Southwest Airlines Company. Although Kelleher was the first skeptical, he worked with the king to gain additional capital and some political support. On 20 February 1968, the Texas Aeronautics Commission approved Southwest's petition to fly between the three cities. However, on 21st February, competing airlines Braniff, Trans, Texans, and Continental blocked the approval with a temporary restraining order. Kelleher, his enthusiasm for the airline, ignited by the efforts to quash it, put his litigation skills to work. The competition argued that Texas did not need a new carrier. It took a 3.5 year legal battle, including three trips to the three courts, for Southwest to prove otherwise and gain the necessary permission to start operating. Although they made a good effort, it was not enough. The company lost $307 million that year, and he losses continued for another year and a half. Southwest was trying to keep costs down and attract consumers without compromising its original goals. By the time Kelhella had become so enthralled with the concept that he gave up the law practice to run Southwest. His aim was to make Southwest airline of the choice in the market it served. One of his innovations was peak and off peak airline pricing. Another was the 10-minute turnaround. After landing, each plane would pull into the gate and get checked by the maintenance and unload passengers and reload and leave the gate within 10 minutes instead of 45 minutes other airlines took. The 10-minute round allowed the three plane airline to maintain a busy schedule and improve its on time performance. Because of their very limited budget, they could not advertise in the usual media, so they chose to promote the airline by words of mouth. To, dis- to, the, to do this line, the company decided to cultivate a sensational off the wall image. Customer service became their top priority. Flight attendants were trained to give tender, loving care to the passengers. The company's slogan was, "Now there is somebody else up there who loves you." In addition to Kelhala, eliminated the annoying time consuming methods of major airlines used in issuing boarding passes by creating open seating on all flights. No seat reservations were needed, and passengers were given numbered boarding cards which were issued and collected at the gate. With the passenger satisfaction their main objective, Kelhala and his team built up a loyal following and reputation for a passenger consideration. Southwest began to climb its way up. By 1978, it was one of the country's most profitable airlines. In the early 2000s, when many airlines suffered major setbacks, some going into the bankruptcy and even out of business, Southwest not only survived but led the industry in profitability. Herb Kelleher gives the advice to success-minded people: stick to your ideas despite the threats of its giant competitors to keep Southwest from entering the business. A positive attitude to kept them going during the 3 years of court fights and no operating income. Think of what the customers want and then give it to them. Overcome obstacles put into your path by taking positive steps to break them down. Even while the battle is being fought, find ways to get them round. Keep open to new opportunities, and when they arise, take positive steps to meet them. Success requires no explanation, failure permits no alibis.